Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Guest today, Mason Arnold. Mason, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for being here. And can you just tell us, first of all, where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Small Potatoes Unlimited?
Thanks for having me. Excited to be a part of this. I'm from Austin, Texas, where I was born and raised. And the project that I'm working on now, we're a holding company that's kind of creating brand house somewhere between, a venture studio and just a collection of brands, but we're consolidating operations. So we have a facility that we are, making product for all of the portfolio brands. And then we do a shared services model. They're all small companies. I love, new, innovative brands and products and love to bring them to market. So we're trying to do that at a little bit more scale.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about this brand specifically, I suppose, with Small Potatoes. What kind of ultimately led you to the decision to consolidate into this brand idea rather than maybe one of the others?
Yeah. So, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started 8 different companies myself. I've been a part of a couple of teams with some others. I had one that went really well right up until COVID. It was called CC's Veggie Co. We made pasta out of fresh vegetables. It was number 3 on the Inc. 5000 list, which is a really fun rocket ship kind of ride for a while. Sold that in 21. Did some passion projects. Me and my wife did a podcast YouTube channel more about sustainability and, some CPG, but health and wellness and sustainability. And then out of that, we launched a dog food business that was super innovative science behind it, upcycling human supply chain scraps into pet food. And that one did not go very well. And I peeled off of that last year. I had done the operational design, got it propped up, but it just didn't need a lot of high level work when it was growing really slowly. And I started doing some consulting with small CPG companies. I saw capital markets drying up. I knew fundraising was about to get a lot harder. This was kind of mid last year. And a lot of these companies, some companies had great products and had some great early traction, but now we're stuck either between co-packer and retailer margin requirements, or they're self-manufacturing and running a facility at like 10% capacity and drowning in OpEx. Well, actually, I came up with a thesis, talked to some investors about potentially, funding the facility and company purchases all at once. And most of them said it was just too small potatoes for them doing, I look for companies that are 1 million to 8 million in revenue, and investors just kept calling it Small Potatoes. So I decided to call the holding company Small Potatoes because I was there's a real gap in the market here. And I think a lot of companies are, might get into trouble soon, even though they have a great product and they've got good traction, but the cash requirements can be pretty rough. So launched it last fall. And, to date, we've purchased 4 companies. We have a facility just north of Austin, Texas. What we say is we focus on things that are dry, things that go into a bag, box, or tub, because that's where our operational processes are kind of geared towards. And, better for you brands. We're really interested in helping better for you brands get better price points and get more retail adoption and such. And so, we're blowing and going now.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I love that. And so speaking of prospective brands that you're looking to either acquire or maybe invest in. So what do you kind of look for aside from, obviously you're in a specific revenue category, which makes sense. You want to work with growing brands and help you where there's still white space for some acceleration there. What other characteristics do you look for in either partnering with a current owner of a business or a business that you want to purchase altogether? What are some other things that you look at to know that it could be a good opportunity for success?
Yeah, the first thing we really dig into is the product. Do we think the product has, a good roadmap ahead of it? I think a lot of, entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs, are they think they're just going to take off and be an overnight success, or they want that. And then when it's not that, it becomes kind of hard. Like, we want to grow companies at a, rational pace. And if you grow too fast, fast, you can cause a lot of problems that can take down the company or you lose your company. And so we want to make sure that the growth that we can help create can be at a pace that the company can support. And that's part of what we're trying to do with Small Potatoes, is make sure that we can provide some of that support where needed with executive management, sales and marketing expertise and things. If there's a big customer meeting for one company, we put everyone in and get ready for that customer meeting. If we have a big operational challenge, then we go over to that company and do that. And so, product is the first one. We're excited to find companies where the people still want to be involved. So far, there's a lot of distress in the market right now and a lot of burned out entrepreneurs, and we get that. And so we've been getting companies where the entrepreneurs are like, I think I'm just done. And that's okay. But we like to know that their numbers were good, like they understood what they were doing and that their financials were believable and that the people involved were trying to do good things. And then, lastly, what is the potential for it and how does it fit into our ecosystem? Because what we want to build over time is a CPG innovation ecosystem, and we're really flexible on whether we buy it outright, we do a majority control. We're open to minority investments as well in exchange for management and expertise if we really believe in the company and we think the founder is onto something really good. So it's really flexible from a structure perspective. And just trying to find things that we think we can help with. Some of these companies have a little bit of retail presence, but not much. And we look at what they did for their retail presentations. And, we've got just a ton of experience getting into national retailers. Two of our companies right now are nationally distributed in Target and Walmart. And so, understanding how to manage those relationships is important. And especially, just retailers and distributors are really clawing for those last few percentages of margin. And it takes some pretty strong arms to hold them off and make sure that the product stays profitable. And so that ends up being a lot of work.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And believe me, I've been doing so many interviews with CPG business owners. I mean, that's one of the biggest pain points that I hear all the time, which is essentially exactly that, which is either funding or like relationships with co-packers and distributors are just like cutting into things too much to keep it feasible, right? So it's really interesting. And so you definitely take the angle of development on the kind of retail expansion side. How do you kind of see, maybe you find a brand that like meets most of these preferences or requirements that you have for something you might be interested in, but is doing more direct to consumer sales rather than on retail side? Is that something you're interested in as well, or how do you kind of view that's like maybe different than somebody who is like has an existing retail relationship that maybe is not ideal or absolutely.
And we just don't have the D2C expertise with our dog food company. We tried to dig into it and we failed at it. We spent some money and the money did not bring us customers. And we're like, all right, we don't know D2C as well as we thought. So we're really on the hunt for companies that can help bring that expertise in. We've got one company doing really well on Amazon. And, having a company that is doing well really helps learn that channel, learn the ins and outs of growth in that channel. And, and we want D2C expertise as well, because once we can institutionalize omni-channel distribution, then it's much easier to bring on companies that don't have strength in maybe none of the channels. And we can say, okay, let's see if we can do retail. Let's see if we can do Amazon. Let's see about D2C and, see where they fit, because some products fit well in one channel and some don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely a kind of a product fit conversation there. But what I also find is, some CPG brands, like you look at them on their face or you see the website and you're like, there's no way they could sell this online. And then I get on the podcast and they're like, oh yeah, we have like 5 million followers on TikTok and we sell a TikTok shop and like we're doing like $1 million in revenue a year from like selling online. I'm like, this is a $2 per unit product. Like, how are you selling this online? It's always really fascinating. Like just the differences I find in those types of brands. And I think a lot of it hinges on like virality of social media. I'll be completely honest. Like that can really anchor you to be able to do that successfully. I think other than that, it's really just dependent more than anything else on just like the types of offerings. If you do have a lower ticket product per unit on the website where there's like, variety packs or like subscription models are obviously great for, selling online as well. If it's something that people are going to like use and throw away for, after a week or whatever the case might be. That's a really interesting take on it. And so you're kind of looking to bring somebody in who is like has an existing retail relationship with what you're used to and used to expanding, but also has like a really viable online operation too, to kind of learn from them how they made that successful and replicate that for the other brands.
Or straight D2C. Yeah. I mean, it's we don't have a requirement of any particular channel presence. What we look for for is that, if it's D2C, is it going viral? Is it growing? If it's retail, is it the right product on the right shelf? We always go and do a competitive analysis on the shelf, and we do it for D2C as well. It's harder for D2C because there's less kind of visible metrics on it. You don't know if a company is doing $1 million or $80 million by the website most of the time. But retail, we can tell really well, like, what does the shelf look like? Is the price point appropriate for where it's located? Is it located in the right place? And then does the look of the packaging help it on shelf or hurt it on shelf? Those are the kinds of things that we have the most experience fixing.
Yeah. And how do you kind of handle those conversations? I mean, this is another pain point I hear from a lot of CPG founders, and people that listen might be interested in hearing from somebody like you about this, which is like, how do you enter into those conversations if, like, you're working with a big retailer and like you see that where it is in the store is like it hasn't been performing well, and that's not really an ideal location? How do you begin to approach those conversations and say, like, hey, like, I really think this is this, like, when you don't necessarily have an experience anywhere else? Might be your first retail experience, like with this, national chain or whatever it might be. If you don't have any, like, testing behind you to say, like, well, in this store it worked really well and we did this, but maybe it's just more of an intuitive thing that yourself. How would you approach somebody to have that conversation?
Yeah, I think with the lack of, experience or a lot of data, you can still point to product attributes. And so I think there's, like, we go in and, we take pictures of the shelf that we think it should be on, and we list, we do an analysis of the products that are on there. And then as much as we can, try to find how well they're doing. And it's a somewhat obvious signal, but people don't give it enough credit, is how many facings different brands have. And, so like Vital Proteins has 10 facings in one part of the store, another 10 in another. And so that they're a huge company doing that. And so things like that are in the research and things that we can point to and say, hey, we have a product that's similar to this Vital Proteins. Whether the price point, whatever we can point to an attribute that's better, that we can say, we think it'll perform better because these attributes are better and they're what consumers are looking for. And so, scrounging for any data to then support that hypothesis and put it into a super pretty presentation.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I think people really appreciate that. As I mentioned, a lot of people, listening are other CPG founders that are kind of doing it all on their own. Well, a lot of people I find, they're the CEO and their wife or their husband is the CFO, and they're just like, out there kicking butt, just the two of them, right? So no, that's awesome. And that's a really good point, I think, which is you can use other products that do have backing that do well just because of the way you see it in the store to say, like, well, like, we are very similar to this, and like, here's why, like, ours is the same, if not better, like, and attributable to this. I think that's really good advice. That's a place to start, at least.
Yeah, it's a fine line too, between, because you want to be similar enough that you say we can, capture market share there, but then the differentiation has to be real also.
Right. It's really interesting. Those are always tough conversations. It's tough waters to navigate if you're not familiar or kind of have some pedigree in those areas. It's also what I find, as a newer players, even if you can find, like, some kind of retailer to take a chance on you as a smaller brand, a lot of the steps along the way can be really, vicious, I'll say. It seems like between, like, all the, distribution, the co-packing you have to go through, it can be very expensive. Working with the actual retailers themselves, it's not always easy. It's not always a open line of communication. So it's very cool. No, I love what you're doing. And one question I always sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
An important point there is that, I firmly believe I would rather have one retailer that we are just demolishing velocity and you get to the number one selling thing in the category than be going for distribution. Like, if I get any kind of, call it keystone account, my number one priority is velocity on those shelves until we are in a defensible position on those shelves, and there's no way that they would drop us, is the goal, at least. If you're getting pulled into distribution, then that's a different thing, but I always prefer to chase velocity versus chasing doors.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a well taken point as well. And it's funny about that is if you do take that approach, one, you then have the data and the testing and the good relationship to be able to speak to that, to have a leg to stand on for the next relationship that you look to find as you look to expand into more doors with a different retailer. And it's really interesting because I find a lot of these, like, brands that either go viral or just have found a really good online following doing e-commerce also is a good place to start if that's a direction you go and you're finding success, just to have at least a proof of concept and a real, something to say about, the price. And, like, if people are willing to pay $12.99 for this thing and wait 2 to 3 days for it to get to them, imagine what they could could do flying off the shelves if they just came across this like this. You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah, I think it's really important, before you expand it to multiple retail locations, to have just some kind of proof of concept and data and backing to say like, no, we know this works and this is how we know it works. And so you're not just like, taking anything that comes because you need the revenue. I think a lot of people approach their first retail conversations that way when they get into wholesale first before anything. So it's really good advice. I appreciate you highlighting that. And yeah, one question I always love to ask everybody that comes in the podcast, which is, I guess we could take it from, when you first started the original, like investor group, I guess we'll call it, for the original, brands you worked with before the consolidation. But I guess anywhere, in between is just as well too. But the question I always love to ask is, if you could go back before you started this brand and working this way, if you could give yourself any piece of advice if you were to start again, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Man, I mean, because we are in the throes of, we're still kind of in setup mode. We're building infrastructure right now, understanding how, the shared services model stretches across brands. It's hard to imagine because there's nothing yet that I feel like I can point to other than, I wish we would have been able to acquire brands more slowly, but there's just like, there was just so much in the market that there's lots of great companies out there that are stuck. And so we had to move quickly on them. And now we're really swamped and working long hours, 7 days a week to, make sure that we execute well. And so if there would have been anything that could have helped me with infrastructure early on, I probably would have done it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think at the moment, I don't have a great answer.
No, it's fair enough. And it's actually a very common sentiment as an answer that I hear a lot from all types of brands, which is, I wish I didn't try to expand as fast as I did. Like, I wish I focused on the more organic growth and like rational growth, as you say. I think it's it's been anecdotal on many occasions. And, after you hear it 30 times, I think the advice is sound, Of course, you want to look for like money as much as you can. You're an entrepreneur. That's the business is for making money, and the business is for, your why and the way you want to give back with that money. Right. So, but I think there are ways you can kind of stretch yourself a little too thin in the early stages. I've heard in CPG brands, I've heard in apparel brands, and now hearing it from you, and even acquiring businesses can happen the same way. So no, I appreciate you sharing that. And I just want to give you an opportunity to, just for anybody that might be listening, again, we have a lot of CPG brands that come on, a lot of CPG brand founder listeners. Anybody might be interested in partnering with you, getting in touch with you, or, checking out the brands, maybe even just try out the product as well. But let everybody know how to stay in touch with you guys.
Yeah. So it's all brand new, but it is, maybe by the time this airs, the website will be up, smallpotatoes.life. And, I'm Mason at smallpotatoes.life. We're definitely, we're in the market for partners kind of across the board, vendors, ingredient suppliers, making sure we build those channels well, and companies who are interested in joining the ecosystem would love to hear from and share more about the ecosystem. And so I think the website there, or my LinkedIn, I'm Mason Arnold, and accessible on there as well.
Awesome. Well, Mason, I just want to say thank you again for coming on. I love what you're doing. I love your passion for everything that you're doing. I just want to wish you the best of luck and continued success in everything you do. Appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks, Mason. Thanks, everybody.